How's everybody doing today? If you can't hear me, yell at me. I talk kind of quietly. Anyway, kind of starting everything out with suppressors. I remember sitting in the committee actually about 2013 when everything was kind of getting pushed through to allow suppressors to be used with Wyoming Game Fish Department, the actual walleye. And hopefully I'll try to cover some of the things, but I'm open to questions anytime, so just speak up or do that. But basically, if you look at our statute 23.3.112, it's kind of comes into the farm that the first part of that whole thing is automatic weapons. You cannot use an automatic weapon wildlife. But they ended up putting in suppressors. And that suppressors, they could be registered, and they also have a muffling device. So, starting whole suppressors, a lot of the landowners were complaining that they wouldn't be able to hear the rifle report if somebody is out there on their property hunting wildlife illegally. The other problem with that was, or the other question I should say with that was, well, people had had the opportunity to sneak around a lot more and start taking more wildlife than what they're licensed to do. And I always have to look at my notes because I always forget that, so. But another big part of that is that people would start shooting from the road, start shooting from the vehicle, which a lot of that stuff is actually illegal to use in the state of Wyoming unless you have certain privileges. So if you're handicapped or something like that, you can shoot from the vehicle. Some of them you can shoot from the road as well. Still have to be 30 feet off with it. But, and then the other, probably the biggest thing that a lot of the wardens were kind of looking at, and even some landowners, was basically spotlighting. Was there going to be more people out there spotlighting, using suppressors? You can't hear anything, that's what they're saying. Yeah, you can. You can still hear suppressors. Hopefully, I think they're going to go through that with you later on today with the suppressors and stuff like that. It does still make some noise, some of it a little bit louder if you go into subsonic or supersonic, I should say. Anyways, but everything that was kind of going on in there, and then they said it was just unfair to the wildlife, and that's probably what we're kind of getting at. What do you guys classify as unfair to the wildlife? I mean, we're always looking at when we're doing things fair chase, correct? So is a high-powered rifle fair chase? That's a lot of the questions you start reaching at. There's a lot of people that shoot from 800 to 1,000 yards. Is the suppressor going to do any changes on that whole thing? Not necessarily. It's not really going to do anything with that. So that's probably one of the bigger things that was discussed. Everything kind of got pushed through. Let's see. The same thing, I guess, you look at scoped rifles. That's another same thing when it comes down to the advantage. You can see a lot further away and shoot a lot further. Is that animal going to hear that report by the time the bullet gets to him? So a suppressor really came down to, it really didn't matter. It just depended if people could hear it and kind of go that direction. Because we do that a lot of times. We're restricted on our mileage that we use. I'll be sitting on a hill with my window down, engine turned off, listening to see if I could hear a report. Because like I said, we're limited to how many miles we can drive in the year to save money through the agency. A lot of little limitations that I actually kind of like. So you didn't hear that, sir. I like the limitations because there's a tendency that we end up working a lot. So with and I went back and I looked at our cases that we had in our case management system to see what about suppressors. Over the last 10 years, we've had a total of 7-8 additional violations that were rolled in with this. So if you do a violation, let's say you go out, you shoot a bull elk without a license and you use a suppressor, you're going to get fined for that bull elk. And that's going to be it's still a misdemeanor, but minimum $5,000 to $10,000 plus you can use your privileges. and anything else associated, with that. If the court allows that type deal. But we could also charge you another $820 for using a suppressor on top of that. So it's just an additional fine. And that could actually play into ATF rules, which I'm not sure how that would affect. Does anybody know how that's gonna affect with ATF? For the violation of the suppressor? Probably not a whole lot, because it's not a federal issue. Most people, maybe I'm kind of a different mindset, but I think about 98-99% of the people are just doing their thing, and they're pretty good. People make mistakes. I'm not pretty good. I make mistakes all the time. But it's those people that have the intent that use that is what we're really looking at when we do a lot of these violations. Like I said, there's a whole debate about how it's gonna affect. Is it gonna, help the animal? It's probably gonna help if you use a suppressor. It's gonna reduce the amount of scare tactic with the other animals around it. Won't allow them to, get too stressed out. Same thing when it comes back and it helps the people. It does help with hearing. Quick little note, sitting in the middle of 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock with an injured deer next to the window of the bedroom in the town of Wyoming. Tried to drive the animal, it didn't. There was too much adrenaline going through, and she was bawling. So you still knock on the door, see what we could do there. So just to let them know what was going on. Suppressors, in all reality, we haven't had a whole lot of issues with them. They've been actually pretty good. You see a lot of hunters out there. Just about 2 days ago, I saw a 16-year-old gal that was using a suppressor. She just laid down, ended up shooting her antelope, and the rest of the herd slowly walked off. But she did drop the buck. It was awesome. That was her second antelope she's ever harvested. Right now, we're still looking at a lot of things as wardens trying to keep our eyes out for stuff like that. Because people really use suppressors, and there's some people that are using it legally, and you guys know. That's pretty much how the department works. Is it can just be tacked on top of the suppressor. Any questions? I'm pretty short with this whole thing. Because it's, yep, go ahead.
Do you have any guess what percentage of hunters are using suppressors?
So what it's actually starting to increase right now. I know when everything kind of started back about 2013, 2015, right in there. Probably the only thing I saw was probably about 1 or 2 hunters per 50 to 100 hunters. And now I'm starting to see a lot more of it. It's probably a little bit higher, probably close to 5 to 8%. Don't quote me on those percentages, but that's just what I see out in the field. Yep.
The example you gave about the young lady shooting the antelope and the rest of them kind of posing happy with. I think that maybe that captures some of the objections that some people have.
Yeah.
The press hunting that it doesn't basically that it doesn't that if you shoot too far enough away with pressure, it won't scare away the rest of the herd, right? There's something right there. Can you speak? Is that impression correct? Can you speak to kind of all of that?
No, and that's an impression you see a lot with that. It does decrease the amount of stress on the animal. You don't see them running away. Probably about this time of year when all the seasons are going full blast. Excuse me, if they see a person, they're running. See a vehicle, they're running. So it doesn't matter. But if you're sitting down and you do end up using a suppressor to harvest an animal, it doesn't affect them as much. If you do end up wounding the animal really doesn't coincide where that bullet came from because of the noise and stuff. And so it gives you the opportunity to make sure you can do a better shot the next time as well. So
it's actually better for the herd, not to scare by the
it actually helps. Yeah, they're probably more scared. They get more scared with people walking around, more people out in the field and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's in all reality, it's better. That would be my opinion. So
better for potentially better for the animal as far as the and for the animal that the rest of the animals that are
yes,
just to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other little questions?
I guess I was thinking, like, with this, like, kind of along those same lines of like follow-up shots, and so. If you're hunting with a group of people, and so it might allow you to take 2 or 3 animals in the same herd and not split them off. If there was widespread adoption and usage of suppressors, like, let's say half the people started using suppressors. And I guess I'm thinking specifically about like late season cow elk tags where sun is down, open areas and clear, and do you think there would ever be consideration of like a tag reduction because of such an increase in efficacy in maybe some of those late season hunts where it's just like, and where it's some people hunt suppress that, you know, the success on late season cow tag has gone from 20% to 45%. But do you think that's ever a possibility with more widespread adoption of suppression?
On that part, no. The tags are gonna be looked at depending on how the habitat is, depending on how the herd is. And if that habitat can support that number of herd right now. To give you another little example, an outfitter, that's actually out of Cheyenne. And he'll bring in 4 or 5 people that have cow tags in the wintertime. And he uses his own firearm with a suppressor on it. He'll have one hunter go up, shoot. Just wait a little bit, make sure it's down, roll in the next person, they shoot the other animal, and so it helps. Elk, we need to reduce elk in the state big time. We have way too many elk, it's hard to get rid of them. But if you have something like that, that's manageable, and they do take care of the meat, that's the other whole issue that we look at, is if they're doing their ethics the way they should be. But yeah, and he'll line out 4 elk, and then he'll stop it from there. Because they can only handle 4 elk at a time. But it does help. Like I said, it helps manage the herds. But the herds, again, they are managed by how's the habitat doing, and then how's the herd doing, and what the objectives become. Any question?
I get the big game hunting totally, but are we seeing it also in like the sporting, so prairie dogs and stuff, the long range season, where they're doing 1,000+ yards?
I really don't see it that much with them. They're still using it. There are some. I figured there'd be a lot more, especially with as much shooting as they do.
Yes.
Overall.
They're kind of prairie dog, that was our second shot, that decided it was in that hole.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And so, but yeah, I figured they'd be using it all the time. All the time. But it depends too, you know, if they're leaving their state with a suppressor and coming into Wyoming compared to somebody who's in the resident. There's other legalities that fall in that whole part. Yes.
Just to rip off George's question a little bit, like, I think, I mean, the concept of fair chase introduced with that, I mean, what are your thoughts?
I was trying to hit on that a little bit because fair chase, is that high powered rifle that you could reach out there 400, 500, 600, 700 yards? Is that considered fair chase when the animal doesn't even know you're in the area? And so with the suppressor, I think it's about the same thing. It's not really going to affect the fair chase as much. I think everything else that you utilize, it's going to be that way. If you want to get into fair chase, then you probably have to start looking at what kind of restrictions you want to do, whether it is suppressor, that how many yards can somebody shoot or not. I deal with some people that they love to shoot long range, and if there's a violation, what is my first question I'm going to ask them? How much do you practice shooting at that distance? You've got to work and shoot that. Did I even get close to your fair chase answer on that? It's not really going to have a factor on it.
It sounds like there might be other hunting technology that would influence the fair chase.
Well, I mean, and sit down and look at it too, if you're doing like a muzzleloader, get the inline muzzleloaders. Before, you know, I used to shoot muzzleloading all the time, or muzzleloaders for Pronghorn, and I'd have to get within 50 to 75 yards. I wouldn't shoot more than 100 yards. I wasn't comfortable doing it. And now you have them 200, 300, 400 yards. There's other factors I think that need to be looked at if you're going to look at the fair chase. Yep.
There's been a couple questions or points brought up about suppressors as a safety thing. Have you seen any arguments or people making the point that it can be a safety factor, as in reducing the sound that's interpreted sometimes by bears as like a dinner bell, like gut pile coming soon. Please come here, and then hunters not having to worry about bears rolling up on them as they're quartering or getting ready to pack out, anything like that. Has that come up at all?
It's been talked about a little bit here and there. We don't have as many issues down here as they do in the northwest part of the state.
That's right.
But I know some of the boards up there, yeah, they talk about that. And it is a benefit, I think. It's probably another little safety issue if you can do it. Use it, because that sound doesn't travel quite as far. That answer that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The an additional fence if a suppressor is used in a game violation, is that what it is?
Yes, so if you, and like I said, if you're out there and you shoot, let's say you're just out there joy hunting and, or you just like to kill things. And you go out and you shoot a deer and you leave it, whether it's a doe, fawn or something like that. That's gonna be a big violation. And so on top of the regular violation, which would be just be take without a license. Or wanted waste in the sense, if you want to go that far, which is must appear type deal. Or we could go privileges and more. We could actually, on top of that violation itself, 700, and the numbers don't put me on the bond schedules and stuff, but like 750. Plus maybe possibly restitution for that animal, which could be up to $4,000. On top of that, we could do the citation for the suppressor use, which is $800. That leaves in my mind, what else have they been doing with the suppressor? So.
So I'm curious, if you can share how many violations you have that are related to. For what I would consider pure firearms violations as opposed to, you know, take without a tag or, waste or what I would consider, you know, animal related violations.
And so, with the firearms, with question on that, what violations with the firearms, correct?
Right.
So. That kind of opens up, and I haven't even looked at the stats on that, because that could be, if you, like shooting from the road or
Shooting from
something
the
like
road,
that.
yeah.
Using the illegal caliber.
Yeah.
In that sense, a lot of that stuff will be, shooting from the road is probably one of the top 15 violations that we run across, whether it's small game or large game. And then, the illegal caliber, it's a little bit less than that. People are actually pretty good about doing that. And so it's gonna be less than that. I don't have the statistics for it, but it's minimal. I think over 18 years, I've written maybe two violations for illegal caliber. But I've written quite a few shooting from the road.
Yeah, just asking for clarification. As far as the hunting license, there's no distinction if I want to use a suppressor.
There, yeah,
You said that there was consequences.
yes. So yeah, with firearm, there is no restrictions on the firearm to use a suppressor. But if it's used illegally or within a violation, I should say, and there's gonna be certain violations that it fits into. And then it can be an additional charge. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
All of us here who are hunters have had this experience. You shoot a deer with a perfect shot, right where you're supposed to, and you knock it down or flip it even, and it gets up and runs away. Then you gotta go find it. Is that because of the noise it hears? Is that why it runs away? Or is it because it got shot, or do we really know?
It got hit and it has no idea what hit it. And so it's just gonna run away. It's gonna be a flight is what it's gonna be. Fight or flight. And most of them, when they get knocked down, one way or another punch, they'll just start running. And it usually, and I have no idea how the animal hears that sound if it hits them. But when you shoot, it hits the deer, they roll, they get up and they run away. That's gonna be I'm getting out of here right now, type deal. I don't know what hit me, but yeah. And it's very frustrating, and then you have to go find them.
So having the suppressor really would help out on that.
No, I think if you hit them, it doesn't matter. I don't know if they even actually hear the report because there's so much. The pain and the shock that's going through them, they may not hear that report. From that fire. But like I said, I haven't been shot yet. That's our good stuff. Any other questions? And you're talking about using like a liter bottle or something like that as a suppressor type deal. That follows the same thing. They'll still ask you, what you're doing, but, it depends on the federals and the state laws, but on a wildlife end of things, if you're still using it to do a violation, you'll still get a citation. And you may be followed up by other agencies. Plain and simple, so.
All right, well, Kelly, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.